A few months before my wife and I got married, we received the news that her mother had been diagnosed with cancer. Very challenging, difficult time. Her mother was determined to fight and beat cancer, and that gave us a lot of hope. Fast forward some time, and my wife and I had been married for 1 year. We got the unfortunate news that my mother-in-law's cancer was not going to be cured, that she was not going to survive it. It was terminal. And so after some pretty hard conversations, my wife came to me and said, I don't want my mom to miss out on our very first child. My wife was the youngest of 4 kids, and her mother had had the chance to watch all of them get married, and almost all of them have children, but we had no children. And my wife just wanted her mother to be able to meet and hold our first child. Of course, I agree. We didn't know what God had in store for us, and we really didn't know how it would go, but we decided it was time to start a family. And thankfully, we did. My wife came to me and said she was pregnant. And some of those memories from that time are some of the best that I have. It was really special because my mother-in-law got to take my wife to go pick out baby clothes. My wife had hosted and been to a lot of baby showers, but she had never had one of her own, and her mother was able to host her first baby shower. We even convinced her to go with us to the ultrasound appointment, you know, the one where you find out the gender, and her mother was the one to find out that our first child would be a boy. It was really special. Her mother got to find out. Nobody knew. We didn't want to know until the gender reveal party. But her mother knew for 24 hours when no one else did. We were really thankful. God blessed us with a lot of really good memories. But the answer to every prayer that you pray is not always yes. Because 3 weeks before our first son was born, my wife's mother died. That was challenging. We almost felt guilty because our first child was born and we were extremely happy. It was a positive, encouraging time. But at the same time, it was like sewn together with grief that we lost and didn't have somebody there with us that we loved. But then everybody showed up. The church came and brought us food and clothes and, just outrageous amounts of things. They were checking on us every day. They would just come over to hold the baby. My wife and I were new parents, and I had never really been around kids. I didn't really like kids, to be honest with you. I thought that they stunk and that I would break them if I held them, but, they sent me home with one from the hospital, and that was scary. We were new parents. I didn't know what to do. And friends came. People that we knew and loved came, and they checked on us and took care of us and asked us what we needed. Even some of our family were there, but the problem with that is that we didn't want any of it. Now, I don't mean that in an ungrateful way, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but they were trying to fill a gap. When someone has a baby, the expectation is that my wife would have her mother there to answer the questions. Why is this baby not sleeping? And why is he crying? Why is he only sleeping? Should we be worried that he's not crying? What do we do with the place where they cut the umbilical cord off? How often do you change the diaper? What in the world do we do when his stomach hurts? They were just trying to fill the gap, but the problem for us was that we didn't want there to be a gap at all. We didn't want there to be a gap to fill. The answer to the prayers that we always pray are not yes, even when we want them to be. Those relationships were difficult. They weren't difficult because the people that were coming to help were mean, and they weren't difficult because they didn't care about us. In fact, they were wonderful people, and they cared about us a lot. What made it difficult is that that's not the relationships we wanted to be there. We wanted the one there that we couldn't have. So they were difficult, and they were challenging. But really what we came to realize is that it was not those people who were difficult. It was us. We were the ones being difficult. The question that was posed, at least one of them, for this particular talk was, how have difficult people helped build your faith? And I want to tell you that difficult people are not always the ones who are mean and people who are upset with you or they're mad at you. Sometimes difficult people are difficult because they're not the people you want. They're not the people that you expected to be there. But difficult people can help build your faith. The people that surrounded us, they weren't necessarily the people that we wanted to surround us. We wanted someone else. But they showed us that God deeply cares for us and that He takes care of us. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 that God is the God of all comfort and the God of all mercy. He said in verse 4 that He comforts us in our afflictions so that we can comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort that we've been comforted by God. Those people and those relationships were difficult, not because they were difficult, mainly because I was difficult. But they showed us the comfort of God. How did difficult people help build your faith? Well, for me, they helped build my faith because they were there when I needed them, but I didn't want them to be there. Difficult people can help build our faith because oftentimes that's exactly who we need when difficult things happen. God can use difficult people in our lives, not normal difficult people, not mean difficult people, but people who will be there for you no matter what. And the beauty is that God's built that right into our lives with the church. The church was there for us. Our close friends were there for us. And even though they were difficult relationships, I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world because they loved us. God will not always answer our prayers with yes, but He does always answer our prayers with the church. God doesn't always answer what we ask with yes, but He does give us people in our lives to help us through challenges. Difficult people may be difficult, but sometimes it's just because we're the ones being difficult. And they help build our faith. Paul later said in 2 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 7 that our hope is not shaken, for we know that you share in our sufferings. You can continue to have faith when things are difficult and you're dealing with difficult people because God places people in our lives. He provides people in our lives to help us through difficult moments. Let's pray together.